and welcome to the 2018 Renault Zoe Dynamic Nav R110, to give it its full title. Some facts and figures, let's get them out of the way. It's got an 80 kilowatt motor, which gives you about 107 brake horsepower and a 0 to 60 time in a fraction under 12 seconds. The battery in this one is a 41 kilowatt hour battery, which I'm pleased to say Renault gives some realistic real-world figures for, and they say you can expect to get anything between 120 and about 185 miles per charge, depending on how you drive it, weather conditions, etc., which is really nice to hear. We're not relying on some international testing standard that would say that this does well over 200 miles, because it's just not true. So the car itself, let's not get bogged down in all those facts and figures, because do you know what, for me, I don't really care about 0 to 60 times. I don't care if this car oversteers, understeers, does anything else, because I'm not a racing driver. I use my car to commute to work, drop the kids off at school, go to the shops, occasionally go on the motorway for a trip somewhere. I want to know, how does this car perform for that? Not what does it look like in black and white on a sheet of paper. So with that in mind, let's look at this from a practical point of view. Now this car itself, inside, and I've been in it now for about 10 miles, so this really is just my initial thoughts and feelings having just got into this car. It's a really comfortable place to be, I have to say. It feels like a much bigger car than it actually is, and I think that's because the batteries are under the floor, under the seats, which raises the seats up, so you feel like you're in quite a dominating high position, which is really nice. The layout in here, I've got to be honest, the screen directly in front of me, which gives me the my speed, etc., is looking a little dated now. Bear in mind, this car has been about since 2012. There's certain areas that are starting to feel a bit tired now, but that said, not all of it. It does still feel like a nice electric vehicle to be in. The main screen itself, the TFT, which gives you all the info regarding infotainment, the energy you're using, all the bits and pieces you need to know. I think that still looks quite fresh and modern. It could do with being a little bit bigger, and it could do with being tilted a little bit more towards the driver, but to be honest, that's nitpicking. That's nitpicking on a car which, let's be honest, it's a very good priced car. This particular car, if I was to buy it brand new at the moment with the battery owned option, I'm looking at a smidgen under £25,000. If I was to buy it as a battery leased option, probably just a little bit over £20,000. Bear in mind, we are November 2018 in the UK. These prices change all the time. It's just what it is today. Coming back to the seating position, as I say, it gives you a really good view, 360, no issues whatsoever. I can see out of all the windows. This doesn't have a rear parking camera, so you need to be able to see out the back and see out the wing mirrors really well, which you can, so no issues with that. My criticism of the seating position would be, and this is probably the same for all Renaults, I've got to be honest, the steering wheel, it will go up and down, but their default steering wheel position seems to be that of like you're driving a bus. The steering wheel always feels too far tilted forwards. So if I adjust my seat to get my position correct to touch the top of the steering wheel, the bottom of the steering wheel then feels too close to me, and vice versa if I move the seat back for the bottom. I never really feel like I'm quite in the right position when I drive any Renaults. The seat itself moves forwards and backwards, there's no up or down movement on it. So I'm limited, but it comes back to actually, because of the price that this car is built towards, there has to be some give and take. And some of that other give and take would be in the charge times. Now this has got a 22 kilowatt charger in it, which means not particularly quick, rapid charging. You can upgrade that, you do have to pay for it. That takes it up to, I think, about 44 kilowatts, which is good, but it's not amazing. To be honest, if you were of a mind that you were somebody that would do a lot of rapid charging, you would have to upgrade it. You couldn't live with 22 kilowatts, it'd just drive you mad. And the plug itself, well, Renault just seemed to have produced their own plug. It's called a Chameleon Plug, and the idea is brilliant. It means that whatever charge rate or whatever charge you plug into, it's always the same plug, which is great news. There's not having to carry different leads or worry about different plugs in the car. It's just not very popular. Your main plug types are generally CCS and CHAdeMO. Here in Europe, the European Union have got their weight behind CCS charging. So what you're going to find now is across Europe, most manufacturers now are going to use CCS. And there is rumour that probably in the next release of the Renault Zoe, there will be CCS charging in there. There's nothing confirmed yet, but it looks like it's going that way. And I think it's long overdue because A, we do need to get to a standard charging type of plug because it makes it easier for everyone. And B, that is really the one big downside of the Zoe. The speed it can charge at, it just isn't up there with any of the other vehicles, any of the other electric vehicles that you can really buy at the moment. I think that's given us a pretty good idea about the inside of the car for the time being. Let's just park up and get out and have a little look at the outside of the car now and see what we think of that. When you consider this car was first released in 2012, I have to say it's actually held up pretty well. There's been a few minor adjustments here and there. I know there were some issues at various points with some of the decals peeling off or flaking, but they seem to have been addressed as time's gone on. The car, I think, as a whole, still looks pretty modern. The nose in particular, it looks like they've updated that bit by bit as they've gone. Personally speaking, I really like it. The back's quite plain, but on the whole, I think it's quite a nice looking car. Well, there you go, there's my first impressions of the car. I'm now going to go and put some miles on it over the next few hours and get a better idea of what it's like to live with. While I do that, I mentioned before that there was some different variants, some different battery sizes, different charge rates. I've got to be honest, it all gets very confusing. So I thought this is a perfect opportunity to give you a very quick history lesson of how we've got to where we are today in the Renault Zoe from 2012 and all the models in between.
On its release, the Renault Zoe came with a 66 kilowatt motor and a 22 kilowatt hour battery. There was no option to own the battery, you had to lease it with a monthly fee. In November of 2015, they updated this and introduced the I to the range. The I signified that the battery was owned. This gave customers more flexibility and the choice between a leased or owned battery. Towards the end of 2016, Renault introduced the 41 kilowatt hour battery. In 2018, they updated the motor to 80 kilowatts. That's become known as the R110. The standard charging speed of all Zoes is 22 kilowatts. However, a Q90 fast charging option is also available, and that increases charge speeds to 43 kilowatts.
Hopefully that's cleared things up for you, because I know there's a lot of people and a lot of dealers who are still quite confused about all the different options and what they mean. So that's given you a little bit of background, which hopefully has helped. So the point of this test drive isn't just to make a video for YouTube and review it. It's actually, there's a personal reason too. My Nissan Leaf is coming up to the end of its PCP, and I need to look for a new electric vehicle, and there's no way I'm going back to ICE. So as part of that research to find out which is the best electric vehicle for me and the best way about it, I'm trying to test drive as many as I possibly can. And the Renault Zoe is a definite contender. It's definitely in the right price range. What I need to work out really is it the right size? Does it suit me and my family for the needs we have? As far as range is concerned, there's no issues there at all. This is an absolute joy. I've barely looked at the range today. In fact, I've been driving it all day. I've still got 90 miles left. So range isn't an issue on this. That will be fine. I'm used to a 24 kilowatt hour Leaf that this time of year I'm getting about 80 miles per charge out of. So what about the size of it then? Will it suit me and my two children and my wife? What about if we want to put some luggage in the back and go a little bit further afield? Thankfully, both those conundrums, if you like, I've got coming up over the next day or so. So let's start off with a look at how would it suit my family. And I always like to get a view of my kids and see what they think, because ultimately they're going to spend a lot of time sat in the back. So I'm off to pick them up from school. So let's go and see what they think first of all. So what do we think?
Good.
First impressions, do you like it?
I like it. It's quite small.
Quite small, it is quite small, isn't it? What's it like in the back, Thomas?
That's just seats.
What one shall I do?
Just seats.
Cool! Told you you'd like to sit in the front.
I can still see it. Annabelle, move!
But you said you could see it. Sit in your seats properly, please.
That's because Annabelle was moving.
That's gonna give me nowhere like that.
Stop being silly!
So it's basically showing you what the
I
wheel.
like technology like that.
And what, so do you want me to tell you what it's doing?
It's
Green again.
Right, so that's the battery. At the moment, there's energy coming out of the battery, going to the motors to drive the wheels.
And, oh, steering wheel.
And yeah, it's sort of to show that it's got the air conditioning, the heater on and stuff like that. Now watch, when I lift my foot off the pedal, look, now it's regenerating energy back into the battery. So you see the arrows are going back to the battery?
Yeah.
It's because the energy is going back in. And now if I put the accelerator, it's all coming out again. Right, so final, shall we buy one, yes or no, Annabelle?
No.
Thomas?
Yes!
Wow, that's clear as mud. Thanks.
Annabelle, we need to...
No, we don't. We've got a perfectly good car.
Annabelle, what about swapping it for the petrol car?
So both of you, if we were to swap this for the Leaf, Annabelle, yes or no?
No.
Thomas?
No.
If we were to swap this for the petrol car, yes or no?
This is the finals.
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Right.
That's the finals.
So you want 2 electric cars?
Yeah.
Yes. That would be...
So Mummy can have an electric car.
This would probably be Daddy's.
So whoever picks us up, we can go in an electric car.
After those pearls of wisdom from my children, I had to take my in-laws to the airport. It's a 25-mile trip and they brought with them 2 pieces of cabin luggage. They fitted easily into the boot. In fact, they said that the boot seemed a lot bigger than it should have been for a car of that size. Throughout the journey, they were really impressed and they liked the car. But again, they did comment that it's probably better suited to maybe a small family or a couple. Certainly a family of our size, it might be a little bit small. One thing that was apparent when I was putting the luggage in the boot is there's no 60-40 split rear seat. I understand it is coming in a future edition, but for now, the whole seat has to fold down. So there you go, there's the thoughts of my family. I think it's fair to say that they really like the car, but they found that perhaps for us as a family, it's a little bit small. But that doesn't mean it's not right for other people. So what I wanted to do to kind of round things up is just talk through some of the things that I've found over the last few days that have either been very good that I think in the car or maybe not so good. So just almost to list them really. So to start off with, let's look at some of the not so good things. So I'm used to regenerative braking as soon as you lift off the pedal. Now, of course, it does that in this car, but actually it doesn't start working properly till you touch the brakes. And you can find that they're a little bit snatchy at times. But, you know, it's not the end of the world. You get used to it. The more you drive it, the more you get used to it. Let's talk about noises. Now, there's a number of noises that come from this car. The indicator noise, it sounds really tinny. I really don't like that at all. I don't know who came up with that idea for a noise, but it's not a pleasant noise. The car itself, when it's at low speed, it emits a noise. Now, you can turn it off. It sounds like it's some old World War II bomber aircraft it's miles away and it's coming in. It's that kind of low droning noise, not a particularly pleasant noise either. And the heater, the fans, they are very, very noisy. When you're in an electric car where you want it to be quiet, if you're sat in traffic or you even put the heating on your driveway, they are very, very noisy, which is something I'm not really used to with other electric cars that I've been in, albeit the Model S was a little bit like that too. So they're the kind of the major gripes around that. Now, people often cite that a reason not to buy a Renault Zoe is because the quality isn't there. The quality issues, build quality issues, it's not as good as other cars, and they always say it's not as good as the Leaf. Well, I think after my 24 hours with this, I disagree. Okay, the materials maybe aren't quite as good as the Leaf, but it's actually really well put together. There's been no real kind of rattles or creaks. There's been nothing that's bothered me in the car that I've thought, oh, this is going to fall to pieces. Now, maybe that's because this is quite a new one, and maybe any of the historic faults that they've corrected now. I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, quality and build quality around this car appears to me to be very, very good. So the other things that I like, the heating, be able to turn the heating on from the key fob. Now, with my Leaf and lots of other electric cars, you have to use an app. Now, the app, certainly on the Nissan app, it's hit and miss whether it works, especially this time of year when it's cold in the mornings and you're trying to log onto the app to defrost your car. I think their servers just crash. It's great, just be able to push a button on a key and it heats up on your driveway. That's a really nice function. And also with that key fob, I like, as soon as you walk away from the car, it locks itself. So if you walk away and you forget to lock it, I like that. I know it's nothing new, but little things like that I think are really, really nice. So overall, I think it's a lovely car, and I would certainly buy one. There's no question about it. It sits really nicely, and I think Ian Sampson, when I went to see him and I went out in his car, I think he summed it up lovely. People always talk about wanting an affordable EV for the masses. This is what we're always striving towards. Well, as he pointed out that day, surely it's here. This is it. This is the affordable EV for the masses. Yes, there's some compromises in it, but you can't have everything for not a lot of money. So it's probably not a car for me and my family, because it would have to replace our main car, and there's not the room to cart us around. Sometimes we find it a little bit tight in the Leaf, so this is that little bit smaller. But if I was looking for a second car, something that could run me to work and back, that me and my wife could use just to nip out and about in, this would definitely be a car that I would look at. There's no question about it, and I wouldn't even necessarily need this size battery, perhaps a smaller battery, a slower charge rate. So if you're looking for a small EV, definitely consider it. Take it out on a 24-hour test drive and see how it fits into your family life. But that's pretty much it for now. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's episode, and it might have given you a little bit of an insight into a car that I've not spent much time with before, but I've been thoroughly impressed. If you have enjoyed it, remember to like and share, and if you're not doing so already, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Just before you go, I wanted to show you this screenshot that I took before I handed the car back after 24 hours. It's currently winter here in the UK, and I drove the car on all types of roads, from B roads to motorways. Over 24 hours, I averaged 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. The end result shows that for me, a full charge will take me 140 miles.